Good evening, Dr. Carlisle, classmates. Before this practicum, I thought I understood struggling readers fairly well because I teach middle school English every day. But then I started sitting beside students one on one and listening to them think out loud while they read. That changed everything. I began realizing that two students can earn similar scores while struggling for completely different reasons. One student may lack decoding automaticity, another may rush through text to escape the task as quickly as possible. Another may understand ideas orally but completely fall apart when trying to organize those ideas independently in writing. On paper, they can look similar. In reality, they are not. And I think that realization is what started transforming the way I think about literacy intervention. One of the biggest areas of growth for me during this experience was learning how important collaboration is in literacy decision making. Throughout this practicum, I worked closely with mentor teachers, inclusion staff, ESL teachers, social workers, and families. One of the most impactful moments came during a discussion about a student who appeared successful on multiple choice reading assessments, but struggled significantly when asked to independently explain what they read. That forced me to slow down and look deeper. The student was compensating. The assessments were not telling the whole story. That experience taught me that literacy specialists cannot rely on scores only. We have to observe how students interact with text in real time. One strategy that completely changed my thinking was using think aloud activities during intervention sessions. Instead of only checking whether students got answers right or wrong, I started paying attention to how they were arriving at answers. Were they rereading strategically? Were they guessing? Were they filling gaps with background knowledge? Were they actually comprehending the text or simply surviving the task? Those observations often revealed more than the assessment itself. And honestly, this experience humbled me. As classroom teachers, we sometimes assume students understand more than they actually do because they learn how to navigate school using compensatory strategies. Some students become incredibly skilled at hiding literacy weaknesses. That is why collaboration matters so much. Another major lesson I learned is that literacy leadership is not about walking into classrooms acting like the smartest person in the room. It is about building trust. Throughout this practicum, I had opportunities to collaborate with teachers who interpreted student performance very differently. Some conversations were easy, others were uncomfortable. But I learned that people are much more willing to reflect honestly when they feel supported rather than evaluated. That changed how I view the role of a literacy specialist. The role is not simply intervention. It is coaching, listening, guiding, helping teachers notice patterns they may not have yet seen. And sometimes it is helping families understand that literacy struggles are not signs of a low intelligence, laziness, or lack of potential. One moment that stayed with me involved a parent who began bringing healthcare literature home from work to practice reading with their child after we discussed specific decoding needs during intervention planning. That reminded me that literacy growth does not belong only to the classroom. It becomes part of a student's identity, confidence, and family life. This practicum also made me think about literacy policy. I became increasingly aware of how many students reach middle school with unresolved foundational reading gaps. Many of them have learned to compensate just enough to avoid immediate intervention, but eventually the demands of academic reading become too heavy. That is why I strongly believe schools need layered intervention systems that combine formal assessments, observational data, progress monitoring, writing analysis, and collaborative instructional planning. If we rely on benchmark scores, we risk missing students who are quietly struggling beneath the surface. Current literacy research reinforced many of these ideas for me. Bean and Goatley described literacy specialists as collaborative leaders and instructional coaches, not simply intervention providers. Kilpatrick's work also reinforced the importance of integrating decoding, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension rather than teaching them in isolation. But beyond the research, this experience changed me professionally because it forced me to become more patient and observant. I stopped asking only, did the student pass? And started asking, what is happening while the student is reading? That is a very different question. From a personal and faith perspective, this experience also reminded me that education requires humility. Students are not data points. They are people carrying strengths, frustrations, fears, compensatory habits, and unrealized potential. And sometimes the most important thing a literacy specialist can do is slow down long enough to truly see what is happening beneath the surface. Thank you for listening.